So, do you get to communicate if you're not willing to connect? I'm going to tell you a story that in some ways kind of tries to drive at that question. Jesus, just because he was getting towards the end of his life, he said to his friends, hey guys, gig's up, they're going to kill me. Let's go down so they can do it. And the guys went, what? He said, no, it's true, they're going to kill me. But it's got to happen, so let's get going. Then he did the weirdest thing. Instead of kind of taking the beeline route, he kind of went roundabout and went down to the lowest place on earth, a place called Jericho. And there in Jericho, walking into town, first of all, heals a blind man. We're not going to spend any time with that, but just to say that healing of that blind man caused a ruckus. And as he heads into town, you know, they didn't have cell phones, right? So nobody could call ahead and say, you're never going to believe what I just, nobody took pictures of it, no YouTube, there's no way to do that. But what happened is people always, over the years, have developed ways to communicate, right? So they would send people on into town, and those people spread the word really quickly, and if you believe in the law of 6 degrees, then you understand things really can spread together very, very, very fast. So what ended up happening then is that everybody came out. Now, I realize it's really tough in this society to believe that everybody would ever come out for something. But honestly, and there's some of you who've lived internationally, you come from other places, you know it's possible that absolutely everything stops. The teachers stop teaching, the policemen stop policing, the doctors stop doctoring, everything stops because their idea is, wait a minute, this is only going to happen one time in my life. I'm not going to miss it. I don't care what I was doing. So Jesus heads into this town, and everybody's there. Now, a couple of questions. Probably all of you have seen videos of the Middle East. What's your thought? Likely that this is a big, broad boulevard, or likely that this was a narrow street? Yeah, and a second question, what do they seem to understand about crowd control? I mean, was this neat and orderly? And so, can you imagine the scene? Jesus is surrounded by his friends, and it's the typical pushing through, everybody's, and they're all trying to get close to him and all that kind of thing, and this is tumultuous thing that's weaving its way through the city. Now, there's a guy there who wants to be part of the action. He's gotten the word too, and his name is Zacchaeus. And we know a few things about Zacchaeus. Number one, he was rich. He was actually a manager, led a whole tax collecting team, and he had made good money at it. But we also know that he was short, and probably, he had some brains, as near as we can figure out. Because he thought through the parade route where it had to go, and he went where the crowd wasn't yet, and climbed up in a tree because he knew that the whole crowd had to come through there, because he wanted to see too. He wasn't going to get left out. So the crowd's kind of inching its way through town, and it gets to the spot, and you can just imagine this tumultuous scene that's going on. Suddenly Jesus stops, and he looks up in the tree, and he calls him by name and says, Zacchaeus, get down out of there. I'm going to come to your house today. Now, a little cultural thing that may be helpful. In Western society, generally, you would say to somebody, well, it's nice you want to come to my house, but it would be great if you waited until I invited you. Right? Well, in other cultures, it works completely opposite. The greatest honor that can be bestowed on you is if someone important self-invites. Because what he's really done is he said, out of everybody that I could invite or self-invite to, I've chosen you. So all of a sudden, in front of this whole crowd, Jesus self-invites to Zacchaeus. Well, Zacchaeus can't believe it, so he turns to his personal assistant and says, get things together, like fast. So that sets in motion a couple of things that are kind of interesting. One is, if you look at the story, there were all kinds of people that wanted to be with Jesus, and particularly the religious people. And the religious people immediately started yapping about it. Because actually, and I'm sorry to have to say this, but religious people oftentimes are pretty good at harumphing. They really get, they just get harumphed. And so they harumphed. You shouldn't be. Right? And of course, they were jabbering back and forth about that. The second thing is this. If I self-invited to your house, you would understand that to be that this is going to be a private conversation, right? It's you and me. But in that culture, it's completely different. There, the notion is, how could you possibly be so selfish as to not share that moment with the people who are closest to you? What is wrong with you? So Zacchaeus understood immediately this was not just a personal conversation. This is where he had to get his tribe together. And that's what he did. His personal assistant, his servants, they all went out and collected his group. And so Jesus makes his way to his house. What's really fascinating is that we know a little bit by archaeological digs that we've done and stuff about how people ate there. You know, they weren't sitting on chairs like we sit on chairs with a high table. What they really did is they had low tables and they had kind of big cushions. Some of you may remember beanbag pillows, from another time, right? So it's kind of a beanbag pillow next to a big but low table. And so everybody is all around the outside of the table, so they're looking at each other while they have food and the servants are bringing the food to put there. This, by the way, helps you also understand a little bit about the notion of foot washing. It's because the feet were, of course, hanging out the back, and the servants would go around and, wash people's feet. So we don't know exactly what happened there, because to be honest, we don't have any record at all of the conversation. We don't know if Jesus stood up and preached a sermon. My own guess is if he did, it probably would have been worth talking about. So I can't, nobody can be definitive about it. My own kind of bet is, I don't think so. But what was happening is that something was going on in the inside of Zacchaeus. And at one point, Zacchaeus, even though he was short, and maybe, just to help us understand Zacchaeus a little bit again, can you imagine the scene where Jesus walks up and invites him? He's up in this tree. He's this short guy, so he's got this kind of Roman toga on. Now, be honest, he's rich, so this is not a Target toga, okay? This is a Nordstrom toga, okay? So just think of Danny DeVito in a Nordstrom toga up in a tree, okay? So it's kind of the image of what you have. Not, rich, but not liked. So this little guy now in his Nordstrom toga stands up there in the middle of all his friends, and he makes the most interesting declaration. He says, you know something, guys? I've been wrong, but I want to be right. Now I see, now I get it. I've been doing it all wrong, but I want to do it right. An interesting thing is that all of us really are about change. We're about world change. We want to see social justice. We want to see changes in the world. We want to see changes in the way we approach the physical earth, environment. And also, we want to see interior change. We want to see people different on the inside so they act different on the outside. And what happens is that Zacchaeus essentially stands up, and he didn't come and whisper in Jesus' ear. He stood up in front of his tribe and said, I've been wrong, but I want to be right. Half of what I have, I'm going to give to the poor. And if I've cheated anybody out of anything, and with him, it's like that if, you go down and, oh yeah, if you've ever cheated anybody out of anything. Yeah, right, if. I'm going to pay him back multiple times. Because I've been wrong, but I want to be right. And then the most amazing thing happens. Jesus kind of lets us in a little bit about what's really going on. He said, I'm pretty glad about this, because today's salvation has come to this household. Because even though nobody else believed it, this guy too is one of Abraham's kids. Every promise that every kid of Abraham is supposed to get, it was also for him. And there's kind of an implied thing to the outside crowd, even though you didn't think so. You didn't think it was for him. You wrote it off. You wrote him off. But I didn't. The promises are still for him too. And then it's as though Jesus takes a step back and he says this, where he really, as near as I can tell, he declares his mission statement. He says, for the Son of Man came to seek and to save that which was lost. That's why I came. This moment, even though I'm on my way to die, this moment is why I've come. What am I all about? I'm all about search and rescue. I'm all about taking the time to try and find and seeing and doing whatever it takes to rescue that which is lost. Now, a little word on that, on the notion of lost, because we kind of think lost means you can't find it. But the word lost there doesn't mean that, nobody knew where Zacchaeus was, or anybody else who's not found. That word lost there really is closer to the word perdition. But it just doesn't work well in English. You say, I came to seek and to save that which was perditioned. So we use the word lost, and if you go to the dictionary, it'll tell you it's there. But lost does not necessarily mean you can't find it. It means that it has lost its value. It has been devalued. It was in a different condition, and now because of what has happened, it has lost that value. So when Jesus said, I've come to seek and to save, meaning to rescue, to restore, to bring back to full value that which has undergone a process of losing its value. At that point, I could go 84 directions. I could talk about me and my own story of discovering and realizing, you know what, Craig? You're lost. Not that nobody knows where I am, but that I have said yes to things that ultimately were destroying me. And I had to come to the place of saying, you know what? I'm lost. And in spite of my best efforts to do so, I don't seem to be able to save myself. I don't seem to be able to rescue me from what I've made myself to be. And I need help. Now, we're a crowd here today, so honestly, I'm going to guess that there's some people out there that can connect with what I'm saying. And as you look back, you now realize that's kind of the process you've gone through. And I'm going to guess that because the number, you guys all know, I don't really know hardly any of you. So I'm not here pointing fingers because I don't know where to point. But what I will say is this. If you look at your life and you sense and feel and recognize that, you know what? I've undergone a process or processes that have devalued me. And I can't fix it. It's bigger than me.
Well, then what I want to tell you is that that same Jesus hasn't changed his mission. What he still is about is looking for, searching for, and finding, rescuing, restoring, revaluing whatever it is that's been lost. Now, how cool is that? And the wonderful thing is, even though he does such a good job of it, he's decided that he's going to let us in. So he doesn't just do it himself. He actually invites us into it. Is it easy to connect? Not always. But if you do connect, then you have the possibility. Sometimes you even self-invite to connect. But you have the possibility of seeing somebody figure out that they've been wrong. And now they want to be right. And see really life change happen. And in talking with Earl and Janet and some of the other people that I had a chance to visit with yesterday, I sensed that's what you are all about. So, I have another question for you. Who's up in the trees? We're walking through life here, but are there people that are up in the trees? And how do I figure out how to connect with them so that finally I can communicate with them so that they can have that great life change that will make Jesus say, there it is again. It's what I'm all about. I came to look for and to rescue and restore that which has been lost. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Craig. Our band's going to come to prepare to lead us in a little bit more worship. I'm going to ask if you'd stand with us, please, at this time. Thanks. You know, the phrase that's in my heart this morning is defining moment. That this could be a turning point for some of us. And what's really resonating with me is sometimes you need a defining moment just to get things right. Get things right. It can be a big right, like your whole relationship with God and eternal life. A smaller right, like the fight you had with your wife in the car on the way to church. And the whole range in between. But I just feel we're at a pivot moment for people to get things right with God and with other people. And today is the day to take a step in that direction. To take a step in that direction. Ben's going to lead us in some worship, and there's two steps that you can take. You can take both of them, one of them, whatever you're comfortable with. One is, if today is the day when you feel like you want to get the big ticket thing right with God, that you want to throw yourself on the Lord's mercy, and really what you're saying is, I've tried so hard to fix myself and it is never going to work. And I want to turn myself over to you and not only receive this gift of eternal life that Jesus brought to Zacchaeus, but also to make the Lord the chief engineer on what I become from here. There's a card on your armrest, and if that's you today, that's the right you need. There's a little line on there that says, I have a new faith in Jesus. Just check that and leave that card there, and we'll connect with you about where things can go for you from there to begin growth in a walk with Jesus and exploring what all of that means. But right here, right now, if that's you and this is your pivot point, I'm just going to ask you real simply as we worship the Lord, right where you are, if you just step out into the aisles, and Craig and Dana and Jan and I will come in, we're just going to very tactfully and discreetly pray for you today. That the Lord will strengthen you and help you in this time of transition. Now here's the key thing. Do not worry about what anyone else thinks, because they're not living your stuff. You are. So let someone pray for you. The Spirit of the Lord's going to come on you, help you make this turn. We can't make it ourselves. And things can be real different this afternoon. Things can be real different. Really different. The Lord loves you so much. It's a great opportunity. So just as you feel it in your heart, just step out there. We'll come and pray with you in a way that will make you glad that we did. And Ben will take us out.